All right. So this is to go over what salvation, this was the last point where salvation means wholeness or restoration. So I just want to go over the word, and you talked about this. I think it's soteria, is in the Greek, it means deliverance. And so there's two verses here. I'll just explain briefly. So you have to look at what they're being delivered from to really know what their salvation is meaning. And so in Luke 171, it's talking about you're going to be saved from your enemies. So you could have if I'm in prison, like with Paul, he had salvation from prison basically. He was delivered from prison. It was a physical restraint that he's now freed from. But when Jesus is talking about salvation, it's talking about something more on a spiritual way. Like you are now being saved. It'll talk about from death. You are now able to be with Christ or with God. You are now in Jesus Christ. So God is now in your presence with you again. So you're being saved a lot more than just from some physical ailment or situation. And then something I found interesting is this is what it means, and this is the word it uses in the Hebrew. Which, does this word look familiar to anyone? So Yeshua, which is where we get Joshua or Jesus. And so literally Jesus, his name is derived from salvation. So he is like our Savior. And so something I want to do real quick in just light of the holiday season before we go into Christmas is if we go to Luke 2. And so I'm going to read verses 29 through 32. So, this is Simeon, when he looks at Jesus, he says, "Sovereign Lord, as you have promised, you may now dismiss your servant in peace, for my eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared in the sight of all nations, a light for revelation to the Gentiles and the glory of your people Israel." So here you have him looking at Jesus saying, "I have seen your salvation." So he's not saying salvation is this concept, or I'm going to be saved from my enemies, or I'm going to but I am looking upon your salvation. It is a person. And then if we look in Luke 3, chapters 4 through 6, it says, as it is written in the book of the words of Isaiah the prophet, a voice of one calling in the wilderness, prepare the way for the Lord, make straight paths for him. Who is this talking about? Preparing the way for the Lord. Yes. And so he says, every valley shall be filled in, every mountain and hill made low. So everything that is low will be brought up, and everything that is high will be brought down. So all will stand even before this person. The crooked road shall become straight, the rough way smooth, and all people will see God's salvation. So here again, you have this idea of John the Baptist is preparing the way for this person who is God's salvation. And so that's just what I want to point out, for this time of Christmas, we're celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ, right? And here, when he was born, everyone is looking upon and seeing, I am now able to see upon God's salvation, right? Our Savior is now born. And I think that just fits really well in this idea of what does salvation mean? And tied to Christmas, where we're celebrating Jesus Christ being born, that we know that is God's salvation.